What is your least favorite US city and why? Story 1. I've traveled all over this country, and I've been to pretty much every corner of every Midwestern and prairie state. So I say this with some conviction. My least favorite place in the US is the Booty Heel of Missouri. It's not even a city, though there are some like Sikeston or Kennett or Caruthersville. It's just a god-forsaken place with no redeeming value whatsoever. It's children of the corn down there. I'll pick the Booty Heel over western Nebraska because it's just a very unnerving place. If you're from there, I'm sorry. BTW Northeast Arkansas counts too, places like Paragould or Blytheville. And you can stretch it up to Cairo too if you want. That entire part of the Mississippi basically, but especially the Booty Heel. Story 2. Hartford. Years ago, I traveled along the East Coast, from Miami to Boston. Got to learn some facts about the once sprawling manufacturing center. Now nothing but enormous parking space, soulless crap brutalist apartments, and large roads. The beautiful old buildings are leveled to make way for the interstate and parking lots. The city had lost its soul. Psst, kids won't solve relationship problems. The worst thing about Hartford is that it is just down the interstate from Waterville, which itself is just down the interstate from Danville. During heavy traffic times, all three metro areas are combined into one hellacious gridlock from the NYCT state line until you manage to get past Hartford. I used to call this madness Dan Waterford traffic. Story 3. Evansville, Indiana. They had more meth lab busts than any other county in the nation. That's not per capita, that's total. A city with under 150,000 had more meth lab busts than ones with millions of people. On top of that, have you seen meth addicts? They're scrawny because they spend the money on meth and not food. Why am I talking about that? Because while they were busy making meth, they also managed to have the highest obesity rate in the nation. That takes skill. You know what other rate was the highest in the nation in Evansville? Suicide. Beyond those wonderful statistics, you want to know what life is actually like there? Remember the show Roseanne? They said the show was in a fake city in Illinois. The guy who created the show was from Evansville. All the shots of places around town are from Evansville. It's disturbing how accurate that show got life in Evansville. Story 4. Nashville, TN. It's all tourists and a bunch of manufactured southern stuff. It's as fake as it gets. Traffic sucks. Every bar is the same. Every restaurant is the same. Everything is a copy and paste with the facade of variety and options. It's gotten pretty expensive too, relatively speaking. All the people who gave it the true character and charm have been pushed out for another dueling piano bar that the new hot country artist wants to slap their name on. Or some trendy restaurant called Gather 69, where it's $39 for crinkle fries with garlic seasoning on them. Story 5. Forks, Washington. There used to be nothing wrong with it, because there used to be nothing about it at all. It was a stop sign you remember on your way to camping. It's a fork. It's a literal fork in pathways around your way the crap out of Forks. Its name isn't a happy, coy little affectation. It's just what it actually is when you're trying to choose between going to the wilderness or back to I don't know, Aberdeen or crap. But then a wave of people decided they could possibly crap a vampire there and want to know all about it when they've heard you've actually been there. Must know about all the amazing romantic glitzy things of this gas station of a town. Get so excited and want to organize trips, and there's a tourism industry built on it. You will not screw vampires there. You won't even meet gothy wannabe vampires there who will pretend to be vampires in vague hope of seduction, because there's nothing there. The most exciting thing that I've ever experienced in Forks is when my friend accidentally went the wrong way down a one-way street, and he corrected himself and you turned right away. And everything was fine and there were no problems, because there was nothing to interrupt in Forks. Story 6. At the moment, Trenton, NJ, downtown by the state capitol, is getting all kinds of grants, but nothing for the poor neighborhoods with burned-out row houses, or enough funds for remediation of the widespread lead contamination in the soil across the city. They shut down a large public school last year because lead levels are so high. Last week, the feds released a report dragging the Trenton police for decades of citizen abuse and bribery. And our water system is chronically stinking and undrinkable. Their water inspectors recently were charged with fraud for not doing the required city-wide testing, but instead taking water from their home faucets and fudging the reports. There's no animal control to speak of. The city government here doesn't give a crap about the living conditions of their residents. Their own interest in bringing in businesses to the snazzed-up downtown and meeting ticket quotas. Story 7. Anyone who doesn't say Baton Rouge hasn't been to Baton Rouge. Humidity, heat, and hurricanes. High crime rate, especially violent crime. Massive religious population. Financial disparity on a scale I've not seen anywhere else. Traffic. The infrastructure is ancient. I-10 in particular is ridiculous. Public transport, for what there is no trains, sucks. Pollution. Healthcare is barely existent. Almost all qualified doctors moved away. Cancer rates so high they call it Cancer Alley. Roaches and mosquitoes outnumber people 1,000,000 to 1. Story 8. Bashing Los Angeles is just too easy, and it's already been done in this thread. So I'm going with Anchorage, Alaska. It's everything I hate about building cities for cars rather than people. Trying to walk anywhere feels dangerous because you're inevitably walking along 8-lane high-speed roads, and the public bus network is lacking. I loved my time in Seattle and Portland, Oregon. So when I say Anchorage has a homeless problem, it is a real problem. But Anchorage has one redeeming factor in that it's only a 30-minute drive from Alaska. My first time up there, I spent a few days in Anchorage planning to explore the city. My second time in Alaska, I spent all of 10 hours in Anchorage, and most of that was sleeping between the train station and the airport. I'll be back to Anchorage for sure, but only as a brief stop before heading out to real Alaska and its true beauty. Story 9. Los Angeles is a really odd place. It's built in easily some of the most beautiful land and weather I've ever seen. It doesn't even have a mosquito problem, while having a ton of beaches too. At the same time, no one has a backyard there unless they're super wealthy. Since I grew up with one growing up in the Midwest, it made me wonder about how much that has to change people's experiences growing up there. Backyards are where I existed when nice weather came around as a child. Water balloon fights, BBQs, birthday parties, etc. all were in my or someone else's backyard. So again, you have this bizarre split. Beautiful weather, but in order to enjoy it you need to actually go somewhere, because no one has a yard. While also going somewhere is absolutely insane. Target to get some small thing? Freeway. Groceries? Freeway. School, work, whatever. Freeway, freeway, freeway. Story 10. I'd have to say Dallas mainly cause the first time I visited a shootout happened in the building next to me, and I had to duck and cover. But the main reason is because the animals and the citizens seem to be running constant turf wars with each other. Or maybe it's just the people in Richardson who do that. Is Richardson its own city, or is it part of Dallas? I stay in the dorms at UTD, and some of the students regularly fight the animals here. It's gotten so bad that the security for the school regularly email all of us not to punch the animals we see on campus. I've seen multiple students start and lose fights with geese, and someone nearly succeed in throwing a raccoon out a window. I don't know what motivates the people here to start so many fights with animals, nor know why they're so bad at fighting them. Story 11. San Jose, California is the most boring, soulless corporate hellscape of a city. It's unfathomable that nearly 1 million people live there, and it's still such a dull pile of blah. Okay, I can admit that the weather is amazing, the airport is never busy, and there is one karaoke bar that's pretty fun, but everything else sucks so much ass that it negates those 3 other things completely. It's somehow too crowded, yet sprawling and empty at the same time. Full of trash and garbage everywhere. Can't ride or walk on most of the trails and paths in the city because they're all sketchy. And there's never anything enjoyable or entertaining to do. The nightlife is a joke. The food scene is a joke. The rent and home prices are outrageous for what you get. Want to pay $1 million for a 900 SQ foot house next to a freeway on ramp? Pass. The traffic is just dumb. The entire culture of the place feels like it was a rejected concept for a 2016 Cap ad. The people have basically just been cloned out of some tech worker NPC spawn center, devoid of personalities, any sense of fun, and literally just existing to take up space in areas that would be infinitely better without them. Anytime someone says something good about the area, there's a 99% chance they're talking about somewhere that's kind of near San Jose, but not actually San Jose. Like, no, the 45-minute drive over the hill to Santa Cruz doesn't count as something fun to do here. That's actually an entirely different place, Steve. And no, it's not actually that cool you work at Facebook and own a condo across the street from the Whole Foods brewery. And no, I don't want to meet up with you at Planet Granite after work on a Tuesday because you're like really into bouldering. Story 12. Place of my birth, Miami. First off, the roads are designed to kill you. In the city proper, it's all blind turns being blocked by an illegally parked truck. I've almost been T-boned a dozen times just trying to exit a random piss-soaked parking garage because I can't see what's happening to my left, and the driver in the other car would rather ram into a person than even imagine. Decelerating? That's right. They've modified the car to only have an acceleration pedal. The brakes are God only knows where. No one slows down or stops when driving in Miami. It's just some crap in a car they can barely afford 16% interest rate payments on. Going as fast as humanly possible and driving like it's GTA, and the hospital bill will be covered during a fade-out. Your existence on the road is an affront, and they will be winning the race that you had no idea you were participating in. The city itself has an interesting mix of hideous Art Deco and neon-covered atrocities. But it's also 90% shopping center. People just reside in the shopping centers, except for the aggressively homeless man lying across the sidewalk with his 2 dogs. You'll hit 4, maybe 5 interesting parts of the city. Then you'll be politely asked to leave the community of $3 million homes you accidentally drove too close to because an automatic scan of your credit score showed that you were not a cocaine dealer, lawyer for cocaine dealers, mortgage banker who specializes in getting loans for cocaine dealers. Everyone is loud. No one talks at a normal volume. All music is to shake at least every residential window within a mile. The beaches are nice if you want to awkwardly hide your boner from the almost naked supermodels who wish you weren't there. They look really good, which you'd know if you weren't awkwardly staring anywhere else. Chinese is good though. Story 13. Waco, Texas stands out to me. A cultureless pit of traffic and agony. It wants to be treated like one of the big boys, but it severely lacks amenities. And one of the only fun things to do, apparently, is engage with the content that Chip and Joanna Gaines made for the city. The food is atrocious. Most of it is chains, and the independent food generally lacks any effort whatsoever. For a college town, you would expect more engaging people, more creative spaces, more of anything, but there just isn't. Unlike poor cities like Memphis or Jackson, Waco doesn't even have an excuse. It's right next to Austin on a major travel route, and could be an affordable, alternative, cool college town, but it's not. It's about as engaging as going to Waxahachie, Texas. It's the antithesis of cool. Story 14. Port Arthur, Texas. I was and am a huge Janis Joplin fan. And when my sibling and I went on a giant trip out west and I found out that we would be passing through, I begged them to stop. We found a tiny little museum where they had some of Janis's things, obviously reproductions beyond a couple things, and a cheap gift shop that really didn't have much beyond low-quality t-shirts and stuff that said she was. From there, I opted not to buy anything beyond the admission price. Not worth it. We got lost and ended up driving around the city until we found our way. It was largely abandoned, impoverished, and just sad. Sibling wasn't too happy with me. Story 15. Personally, Seattle. I had a horrible experience living there for several months in the mid-'80s. They hated people who moved from California as too aggressive. I grew up in New York City and heard a comment in the office, "Sure glad that East Coast crap is gone," about an out-of-town manager who just left the office. I found most people I worked with to have a Midwestern attitude, with a huge amount of Swedish and Nordic ancestry. I picked up on some subtle racism and anti-Semitism working there, which is probably why they eventually fired me. I'm Jewish. I don't know what it's like now. I visited there over 13 years ago to see an old friend. He had grown up in Ohio and fit right in.